The Ukrainian armed forces are crushing the enemy. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, a train with sleeping cars and enemy equipment have been destroyed. An analog of the Marshall Plan, the US and EU are preparing for large-scale reconstruction of Ukraine. After the war, the Kremlin is lying again. Russia accuses Ukraine of spreading radioactive substances in Syria. Spy scandal. In the EU, a translator who took notes during Zelensky's closed speech was dismissed. She is suspected of working for Russia. And in France, a Russian basketball player is under investigation for cyberattacks against the USA. Greetings! My name is Katerina Pachalchuk, and right now, here are the main stories. But first, like this video if you support Ukraine, and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you on this vast platform, YouTube. Russia is preparing for a new wave of offensive and is already changing its tactics. Instead of a frontal assault on Pokrovsk, the occupiers are trying to bypass the city from the north. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War are warning about this. The new target is Dobropilya. The city was attacked by FPV drones for the first time. They targeted civilians directly.
Well, get down. Well,
Go away.
Russian forces launched a massive FPV drone strike on the center of Dobropilya. Eyewitnesses report 2 wounded civilians. About 10 cars were damaged.
Analysts also predict increased pressure on Rodinske. The enemy hopes that the Ukrainian armed forces will withdraw from Pokrovsk and Mirnorod themselves under the threat of encirclement from the north. But our forces are not retreating. On the contrary, they are destroying the enemy. According to Viktor Triubov, spokesperson for the Khortytsia Operational Strategic Group of Troops, Russia has concentrated 100,000 soldiers in one direction in the east. The hottest spots remain Pokrovsk and Novopavlivka. At the same time, the offensive near Kharkiv has failed. The enemy has been stopped near Vovchansk.
the Russians are constantly trying to put pressure towards the city of Vovchansk and nearby settlements directly from the territory of the Russian Federation, but nevertheless, they've been stuck there for quite a while. This is a steady pressure that they are maintaining, essentially so that Ukrainians don't let their guard down, not even for a moment. But the city of Vovchansk has already been completely destroyed. The city, unfortunately, but nevertheless, they still can't get past it. It's been over a year now, because the fighting there has been going on for over a year, as you probably remember. That was the first attempt to enter the territory of Kharkiv region. From that side, and then beyond Vovchansk, there are the adjacent settlements. It didn't work out.
In the Kupiansk direction, according to deep state analysts, there is some advancement near Borivska Andrivka and Zeleny High. The occupiers have started attacking again in the direction of Slovyansk. Partial successes. The enemy has them in the Lyman and Kramatorsk directions. In the area of Yablunivka, as well as along the line of Kolodiasy, Zelena Dolina, Serednia to the northeast of Slovyansk. Near Zelena Dolina, they are literally crawling through the fields and groves under constant pressure. Active preparations for assaults are also underway in the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions, as reported by the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Volodymyr.
In addition, over the past few days, the number of enemy airstrikes against us has increased. The enemy has started to operate very actively on the right bank in the Kherson direction, launching strikes with unguided aerial rockets on several populated areas.
But we are responding as well. The 63rd Brigade near Lyman destroyed 15 Russian armored vehicles with drones. And in the Zaporizhzhia direction, Special Operations Forces together with partisans burned enemy equipment and personnel. And the final chord, they blew up yet another enemy train carrying fuel. Between Tokmak and Chernichivka in the occupied part of Zaporizhzhia region, dozens of tank cars were burned.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
20 tank cars never made it to their destination. As soon as the Russians repaired the tracks, it happened again. Good morning, we are from Ukraine.
So don't forget to donate to our military to eliminate everything Russian from our land. And thank our defenders. Even in the comments, they'll definitely see it. Meanwhile, the European Union is preparing a European Global Support Fund for the reconstruction of Ukraine. This was announced by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
I want to be the first now. The first global support fund for the global reconstruction and renovation of Ukraine.
And the US Special Representative Keith Kellogg stated directly that Ukraine needs an analog of the American Marshall Plan for reconstruction, which once lifted Europe from the ruins after World War II. At that time, one of the goals of the Marshall Plan was to unite Europe, that is, to eliminate any currency and customs barriers, both within Europe itself and between Europe and the United States. Kellogg believes that something similar will save us as well.
I remember from my student years the story of the American Marshall Plan. I think we need to do the same for Ukraine, to restore what was lost. It won't be easy. I think we are ready for this.
Let me remind you, yesterday a conference on Ukraine's reconstruction began in Rome. Leaders from various countries and representatives of the private sector who support Ukrainians and are interested in the reconstruction and bright future of our country are participating. And while some are talking about increasing support and uniting around Ukraine, in Poland they have decided to take a bit of offense at Kyiv. As if we didn't have enough people offended from the eastern direction. Duda stated that Ukraine and its allies have underestimated Poland's assistance in the war. Specifically in the context of supplying military aid through the Rzeszow airport.
For example, I believe that both Ukrainians and our allies simply think that the airport in Rzeszow and our highways belong to them, as if they're theirs. But they're not theirs. They're ours. So if someone doesn't like something, we just close it and say goodbye.
He also added that Poland was not invited to very important international bodies where the issue of providing aid was being decided. Specifically, aid that passes through Polish territory. He did not specify exactly what he was referring to. However, he added this.
We close the airport in Rzeszow, and you deliver aid to Ukraine by sea, by air? I don't know. Drop it by parachute. Figure it out. Figure it out if you think you don't need us.
Sometimes the mood among Poles themselves isn't great either. For example, in Warsaw, a local Pole snapped. At 4 a.m., he was throwing furniture out the window and shouting about deporting Ukrainians.
Oh my goodness. Well, so what exactly happened there? Oh, well, there's absolutely nothing that could have possibly happened. No way.
This is the best year of the winter! Winter is coming!
Drugs or a cry from the soul? It's not clear yet, but the police are already dealing with him. What do you think of such allies? Write in the comments. It's no secret to anyone that Russia has a very extensive agent network. There are spies literally everywhere. European institutions are not excluded either. What does this mean? Russia likely sent its spy to a closed European meeting. We're talking about a French-Ukrainian interpreter who was taking notes during a closed speech by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about defense and weapons in December of last year.
For the year 2025, European nations have formally promised to provide Ukraine with at least 30 billion euros in crucial financial aid and extensively discussed how this significant money would be effectively used. The meeting where these details were discussed took place behind closed doors, and interpreters working at such events are strictly forbidden from making any written notes. But Le Monde writes, in the midst of the meeting, the Czech interpreters noticed their colleague responsible for the Ukrainian translation. The publication refers to her as Miss the Force. She was taking notes on what the officials were discussing. This was immediately reported to the security services, who burst into the booth and interrupted the interpreter, catching her in the act, the publication writes. Miss, I had her notes and equipment confiscated and was forced to leave the premises. That same day, her accreditation was revoked. She was banned from entering the European Commission premises and an investigation was launched.
You can hear the echo of KGB-style methods at work. An interpreter, a spy, it's practically a script for a victory-obsessed propaganda film. The woman, as you may have guessed, is suspected of spying for Russia, which is why she was fired and will no longer be invited to international meetings. But here's what's interesting. As it turned out, Ukrainian diplomats never wanted to work with her because they knew about her contacts with Russian officials.
Le Monde writes that this woman's parents are Russian. For several years, Ukrainian embassies in France and Brussels denied this woman access to visits involving the president. Among the complaints made against her by an official of the Ukrainian embassy in Paris was that she maintains professional relations with Russian officials, writes Le Monde. In other words, Ukrainian diplomats warned EU officials about the danger.
The woman herself, of course, denies the accusations. Forget about the dirty bomb, because Russia has come up with a new fake scare story about a radioactive threat from Ukraine. Now, the Kremlin is claiming that Ukraine is spreading radioactive substances disguised as some kind of military equipment, which, according to the ingenious plot of Russian propagandist scriptwriters, is being sold by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. According to Ukrainian intelligence, Russia is currently spreading this narrative in Syria.
In Syria, information is being spread about the alleged sale of military equipment supposedly purchased from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. The military equipment fabricated by the Russians is a cheaply assembled container containing capsules labeled plutonium and uranium. The contents of the capsules are unknown. The container and its contents were made in the classic style of Russian propaganda shodili. Unreadable Cyrillic text was used along with blue tape to attach the logo. There are also glaring mistakes in the labeling of the Air Force.
Well, I'd like to appreciate the idea, but it's already been done. It happened back in 2023. In short, they're just recycling the same old stories and tales. Apparently, their imagination is running dry. Whether they're spies or not, we don't know, but he was definitely working for Russia. In France, Russian national basketball team player Danila Kasatkin was detained. The Russian is suspected of hacking against none other than the United States of America.
It is known that the hacker network the basketball player allegedly belonged to carried out attacks on around 900 companies. In particular, 2 US federal agencies were targeted between 2020 and 2022.
A court hearing has already taken place in the case of the Russian basketball player hacker. The athlete has been kept in custody until the issue of extradition is resolved. The basketball player, as expected, denies the charges. He claims he has nothing to do with hacker activities. Do you believe him? Although the White House's rhetoric regarding Putin and Russia has once again shifted towards supporting Ukraine and condemning the terrorist state, the US and Russia continue negotiations. Of course, this isn't particularly encouraging, although once again it's just rhetoric. But let's take it one step at a time. In Malaysia, a meeting took place between US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Putin's horse, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. They talked for almost an hour, but the outcomes of the meeting are completely different for each side.
While the Russian side has consistently and vociferously boasted about the perceived success of a highly constructive dialogue, emphasizing their profound and mutual interest in diligently maintaining and fostering genuinely good relations, thereby projecting an image of diplomatic triumph and cooperative engagement, the United States, in stark contrast, acknowledges that, yes, the meeting was indeed profoundly important and held significant implications for international diplomacy and bilateral relations, yet simultaneously conveys that President Trump remains deeply and unequivocally disappointed with Russia, particularly concerning various unresolved issues and ongoing geopolitical tensions that continue to strain the relationship between the two global powers, leading to a complex and often contradictory narrative surrounding the outcomes and interpretations of the high-level discussions.
Moreover, according to Rubio, Trump is already cooperating with the Senate on the issue of new sanctions against Russia.
Over the past week, we have been working with the Senate on what this sanctions bill will look like. And the leaders of both chambers have stated that they are ready to start moving forward on this issue.
Rubio also confirmed that the US is working on the issue of supplying Patriots. This concerns not only the air defense system from America itself.
We sincerely hope that we can convince our valued NATO partners to provide Ukraine with the essential Patriot missile batteries that they are currently not actively using.
Well, as they say, the difference is hard to miss. For the full picture, Lavrov needed to turn on Rubio's fresh video of one of Russia's main propagandists, Solovyov, but he threatens to destroy America.
I have such a simple question. And how much interest will Trump believe it if they say we're going to fuck America? How much will Trump believe it when he realizes that two Poseidons coming from different sides of the North American continent will create a radioactive tsunami that will forever form a strait named after Comrade Stalin? How much will Donald Trump truly believe it? when he fully admits that our submarines of a certain specific series are indeed equipped with weapons powerful enough that absolutely no defensive element, be it a Golden Dome, a Diamond Shield, or whatever else whether already built or not even close to being built, could possibly withstand them. Could protect America from a retaliatory strike? Or does he seriously believe that as soon as they launch their ballistic missiles or send up their damn B-2S, which are visible to us and are trying to strike our territory, we'll just sit here and think, oh, look at that. No, we'll just wipe you off the face of the earth. To hell with you. If you think that our Supreme Commander-in-Chief was just joking when he said, why would we need a world without Russia? Or when you think it was just a random turn of phrase when he said that a retaliatory strike means we go to heaven and you'll just drop dead right away. Have you completely lost your minds? What do you even think of yourselves? Seriously, what do you think of yourselves, Americans? All of you, get a grip already, you bastards.
Or is it about making threats? A radioactive tsunami doesn't really fit the narrative of supporting good, friendly relations, does it? What? Believe that? We realized a long time ago that you can't trust Putin's words about wanting peace. It opens our eyes to obvious facts. The President of the United States.
I am very disappointed with the conversation with President Putin. Honestly, it seems to me that Putin just isn't there anymore. I don't see any sign that he wants to stop, and that's very bad. Really, I'm just telling it like it is. He doesn't look like someone who wants to end this war.
Of course, the question remains how long Trump's clarity will last. But it seems that at the stop called Putin is a liar, Trump might linger for a while. Because the bunker dwarf has once again shown his disrespect for the American leader. The New York Times writes that Putin openly ignores Trump's calls for peace and all his conversations with him are nothing but a performance. Just to pull the wool over Trump's eyes. And why is that? Because Putin believes Ukraine is about to fall.
As Trump expresses his disappointment, it becomes increasingly clear that Putin is willing to risk his relationship with the US president. All for the sake of what has become his main goal after 40 months of full-scale war, achieving Ukraine's capitulation to his demands. Putin's continuation of Russia's offensive, combined with the escalation of bombings, has led to the latest outburst of disappointment between Trump and Putin. Despite 6 phone calls between the two leaders since February and 2 rounds of direct negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, in Istanbul, Russia only escalated the situation.
Well, considering the experience of trying to take Kyiv in 3 days, perhaps it's better to be more reserved with such statements. Although it's not the first time they've denied what was said. We don't know what Putin believes or who is trying to convince him of Russia's invincibility, but reality is somewhat different and it speaks for itself. The Economist writes that the Russian summer offensive has become the deadliest for Russia since the start of the full-scale invasion.
Russian occupiers captured by Ukrainian defenders say that the summer offensive was presented to them as the final push. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is trying to break the fighting spirit of Ukrainians and to gain the upper hand in the war. And apparently he is ready to pay the price for it, the article emphasizes. According to the publication's analysis, during the summer offensive that began on May 1, Russian forces may have lost about 31,000 personnel. Thus, it became the deadliest period for Russia throughout the entire war.
And you won't believe it, but even a Russian militant actually admits this. Remember Pavel Gubarev, the former official of the so-called DNR.
No one knows for certain who administered the potent truth serum to him, but under its undeniable influence, he unequivocally stated the facts. How did it come to pass that he, seemingly out of nowhere, began openly discussing and revealing significant financial losses or other detrimental outcomes?
It's a mystery, because officially, publicly, the Kremlin has spoken about losses only once, in September 2022, and they named the number of losses as 6,000.
Our losses as of today are a mystery. About 5,937 people lost.
What will Russia do to Gubarev for telling the truth? Place your bets in the comments. And a few more words about Russia's human resources. The Kremlin doesn't value them because they're just cannon fodder. Expendable. And this is confirmed by the aforementioned Solovyov, who says that it's perfectly fine to sacrifice another 300,000 Russian soldiers just to capture the city of Zaporizhzhia.
Well, how many can you send to the Zaporizhzhia direction? Well, in the end, just send there at least 200, even 300,000 people. Well, Zaporizhzhia must be ours.
And we have the resources and the resolve to make it happen.
But whether there will be enough body bags for these soldiers, he doesn't think about. Just as, in fact, the authorities don't think about the fate of the liberators who returned from the war, alive but maimed. Here are the conditions in which the wounded are treated at the Rostov hospital. And while Russia sends hundreds of thousands of its people to slaughter, Kremlin priests lash out at women, blaming them for the demographic crisis.
We've reached a time when women don't give birth to anyone anymore. They've become weak, cowardly, depraved, and don't want to give birth. So we can't overwhelm anyone with sheer numbers anymore. If anyone can overwhelm with numbers, it's India and China who could bury us all. Give each of them half a head and they'd still bury us in heads. But not us. We're shrinking. Our numbers are dwindling. That's why we need to preserve our people. There's actually such a practice, population preservation. In other words, we need to protect our people. Protect people from drug addiction, from dying behind the wheel while drunk. Protect people from alcoholism, protect people from senseless deaths, as often happens among young people. Like those train surfers, risking their lives and dying for nothing. It would be better if they went to the front.
Well, yes, of course. As if that's the only problem. In short, the original Russian idea of the Babas and what they provoke has fallen apart. Please like this video to support what we do. And be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss future episodes. See you soon!